Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF. Our audience, and of course, we are following very closely the confirmation hearing that's coming up 1 week from today with Todd Blanche trying to prove that he's fit to be the Attorney General of the United States. And there are groups out there that are trying to assemble information that the public needs to know, that the senators who are in the confirmation process need to know in advance, especially with fast-moving stories on multiple controversies surrounding Todd Blanche, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein, or it's the Jan 6 fund, or it's the attempted settlement amendment to try to clear Donald Trump and his family and his affiliates of any type of criminal liability or tax exposure. The list goes on. There's at least a dozen, and I'm using the word controversies mildly, around this candidate who has declared that he is not going to be independent from the executive branch or from his former client and current client, Donald Trump, at all. In fact, he thinks that is a strength of his, that he's going to be loyal and he loves the president and all of that. A group that we have been focused on here, American Oversight, has filed dozens of Freedom of Information Act requests against the Trump administration to try to make them as transparent as they claim to be about everything. Whether it's the medical condition of Donald Trump, or it's things about the Epstein files or things about Todd Blanche. And we have been following closely what's now been converted into a lawsuit by American Oversight to try to obtain for the American people specific documents from the Department of Justice about Todd Blanche, his nexus and connection to things like the Epstein files, Ghislaine Maxwell and pardons, Mar-a-Lago and the burying of the Mar-a-Lago report from the public's view and through Judge Cannon, and things that are important to decide whether he's fit to serve in that position. And he'll have to answer for it. So there is a court proceeding being led by, as plaintiffs, the lawyers for American Oversight. Todd Blanche is fighting tooth and nail. I just saw his new filing. I said, we've got to get Chioma Chukwu back here. She's executive director of the American Oversight Group. She was with me last week. Let's update the audience by bringing in Chioma. Hi, Chioma.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
Staying busy. Thanks so much for having me back.
Absolutely. Let's talk. So many things that I could talk about. I went on American Oversight's website. We'll put that link below for people, and people will be amazed by the amount of Freedom of Information Act requests and then even lawsuits that you're handling to try to make this presidency as transparent as it tells the American people that it is. But this particular case, quite interesting, right? You want emails and texts and calendar invites and encrypted messages related to Jeffrey Epstein and Blanche and Trump, Ghislaine Maxwell, Blanche and Trump, redactions, Maxwell's prison transfer, the Jack Smith report, Mar-a-Lago, Judge Cannon, all the things that we know are out there or should be out there and that we suspect. And all you want in the lawsuit is that they expedite processing of your Information Act request and tell whether there are or are not those documents. And rather than just saying, sure, we'll expedite it, we get a filing in opposition, 38 pages by Todd Blanche, which is basically telling the court, I'm not producing anything, and they don't have the right, American Oversight, to demand it. They don't have the right to expedite it, anything, and he's just trying to run out the clock, right, Chioma?
Unfortunately, that's exactly right. I will make one correction. That you are exactly right, that we are asking the court to expedite or to force the DOJ to expedite the processing of the records. But we're also asking the court to force the DOJ to create a timeline by which those records would be made public, produced to American Oversight, so we could put them into the hands of the public before Todd Blanche's confirmation hearing. And so, as you mentioned, when we were together last week, we had just filed our motion for preliminary injunction because the clock is ticking. There is urgency to get these records into the hands of the public because they deserve to know what is unknown about Todd Blanche and whether he will be able to exercise independence as the next Attorney General. We were just waiting to see how the DOJ was going to respond. But as you mentioned, we got our answer, a 38-page motion opposing our efforts to give the American people what they deserve. It was quite a read. At bottom, what they are essentially arguing in their motion, in their opposition, is that there's no urgency to get these documents into the hands of the American public. This is just business as usual, that it shouldn't matter if the records are produced now, if the records are produced after the confirmation hearing, that it's all the same, that if we wanted to conduct oversight at a later date, if Congress wanted to conduct oversight after Todd Blanche is actually confirmed, they can do so. But that completely misses the point. The Senate confirmation hearing is the moment when the information has its greatest value. And the Senate gets one chance to consider the information that we are asking for and the information that has been made public in the weeks leading up to the confirmation hearing to decide whether Todd Blanche should become the nation's chief law enforcement officer. Once that vote happens, we cannot unring the bell. And so that is what we are pushing for in this litigation. And the DOJ is trying to do everything they can to stop us.
Well, and one correction. I'm glad you corrected me. He's trying to be the co-chief law enforcement, a legal officer, because Donald Trump has said he is right. He said it out loud. Pam Bondi was standing next to him when she was the Attorney General. He said he's the lawgiver. He is the chief law enforcement officer in America. All kidding aside, what I also almost fell out of my chair over when I read, and I know your team is working on their reply, which will have been filed just about the time this video goes up. So I'm not asking you to anticipate any of your arguments, but you can comment as you feel comfortable. But for them to use Chief Judge Boasberg and a ruling by Chief Judge Boasberg and try to convince your judge, Judge Dabney Friedrich, to follow Chief Judge Boasberg in an entirely different case about an entirely different matter was actually laughable for me. For those that are tuning in late, Chief Judge Boasberg has been pilloried, attacked. He's been threatened with impeachment. He's been threatened with judicial misconduct complaints. He's been threatened with defunding of his bench because Donald Trump has called him a Marxist, a radicalist, a criminal, an unelected person who has no right to oversee anything that Donald Trump has done. They have gone after probably no other federal judge more and with personal attacks and professional attacks than Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg. Side note, we're about to hear from an appellate panel whether Chief Judge Boasberg is going to be able to go forward with his criminal contempt proceedings against the Trump administration related to the people they sent to El Salvador. And yet here they are extolling the virtue of Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg. No footnote to even say, we normally don't agree with anything that he does or says, but we like his ruling here. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw this constant mantra refrain of Chief Judge Jeb Boasberg?
That is politically expedient. The administration is willing to do anything. They will twist themselves into a pretzel as long as it serves their interests, which typically is evading transparency and accountability. And you're exactly right. They attempted to use the reasoning in that case, which, as you mentioned, is factually different than the case at issue, where there is an imminent Senate confirmation hearing where it will be decided whether Todd Blanche, the person who has been at the center of many controversies, the person who has served as President Trump's personal criminal defense attorney, the person who testified before he stepped foot into the Department of Justice as the Deputy Attorney General that he would never sanction the release of the Jack Smith classified document report, whether that person is fit to serve in a role that requires independence. But the DOJ is saying, nothing to see here. If you want to ask those questions, ask the questions
later.
After he's in that
after
role.
He's confirmed. Well, my audience knows well about people who don't tell the truth to get the job, like Supreme Court justices that talk about, we're definitely going to, Roe versus Wade, that's been on the books for 50 years. That's super precedent. We would never try to overturn. And after confirmation, we're left with what? Impeachment proceedings to try to get rid of the person. I mean, it has, as you said, it has to happen now. So that's why it puts a lie to this argument I'm going to read to for our audience's purposes on page 1 over to 2 in the filing by Todd Blanche. And this, again, is a series of filings, just to put this in the proper continuum, all in the last week, in which Todd Blanche has told a federal judge, no, I'm not going to produce. I'm not going to testify. I'm not going to provide documents. I mean, just before he filed this, he had his lawyers file against Katie Fang, one of our colleagues here on the network, in her lawsuit with Judge Emmett Sullivan. I'm not turning over any more documents in the Epstein files. I'm not translating foreign documents in the Epstein files because I don't want to. I'm not doing any of that. It was another big fat, I'm not doing it, especially as he tries to, get some sort of glide path to get enough votes to be confirmed. Here's what he writes in your case. American Oversight's inconsistent positions point to a broader problem with its motion. It cannot carry its burden on irreparable harm. The requested documents will not lose their value after a confirmation vote because the public interest in assessing the acting AG's qualifications and conduct will not evaporate after a Senate vote on his nomination. Confirmed officials remain subject to public accountability and congressional oversight indefinitely. What do you have to say about that?
It defies logic. Anyone who is reading their arguments will see so transparently what they're trying to do. They want to rush this nomination process, get Todd Blanche into this role so that they can continue swatting off attempts to get information to release to the public. We've already seen what Todd Blanche has done, as you just mentioned. He's not willing to turn over information. He's not willing to respond to court's requests to declare under penalty of perjury what he has or hasn't done. What do you think is going to happen when he becomes the attorney general, when he is empowered with even more, and when the public is supposed to be relying on him to protect our national security, our neighborhoods, enforcing our civil rights? He is going to continue to wreak havoc with impunity. And so the fact that they're saying that the records will not lose value because he's subject to accountability, it completely misses the point. Those records will absolutely lose value in that we will not be able to make a determination. The Senate will not be able to make a determination if he is fit to serve. There is still the possibility that the Senate can determine he is not fit to serve because he is laden with scandal. There is still the possibility that the confirmation hearing can result in a change of minds based on the information that is unearthed. But the DOJ is trying to say there is nothing that those records would do to change the hearts and minds of the senators, of the public. If you want to ask questions in 6 months, ask questions in a year, after the time that Todd Blanche is able to completely destroy what's left of the Department of Justice. And that just is completely inconsistent with both the spirit of FOIA, which is to get information into the hands of people so that they can make the determination for themselves if this person is fit to serve, and to get the information into the hands of the Senate so they can exercise their constitutional duty to determine if this person should be confirmed as the Attorney General.
I mean, look, Todd Blanche, we'll put it into the vernacular, common vernacular. Todd Blanche will do anything and has done many, many bad things in order to curry favor with his former client, current client, and to try to get the job. There is nothing, apparently, that he won't do, no level that he won't seek or reach in order to curry favor with Trump. And he's done whatever Trump needed him to do as some sort of circus animal, he has done. I mean, since he took over from Pam Bondi. You want to indict James Comey for seashells on a beach? You got it. You want to go after the Southern Poverty Law Center for trying to break up and break down white nationalist and supremacist groups? I'll bring an indictment against them. You want me to create a super pardon mechanism for you and your family for all crimes and tax liability dating back decades? I'll do it. You want me to, right? You want me to continue to bury and hide and take the lead on it in the Epstein files, in whatever we're doing down in Florida with Judge Cannon, who's got a grand jury proceeding in front of her against the intelligence community? I will do it. In fact, you and I'd like to ask you, is there anything that you think Todd Blanche would not do at this moment to get that job?
There is nothing that I am aware of Todd Blanche frankly hasn't done, as you just described, nor that he would not do. He has made very clear where his loyalty lies, and his loyalty lies to, as you said, the co-attorney general, the nation's chief law enforcement officer, whose name happens to be Donald J. Trump.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are tuning in late here, and I've had you on before, I don't want people to take away that you're just the executive director of American Oversight. You're a litigator and trial lawyer in your own right. How did you get from your prior career? I know you worked at the EEOC, you worked in civil rights and employment law. How did you get from that and Capitol Hill to this position? What attracted you to American Oversight?
Well, I recognized pretty quickly that civil society was going to be the last frontier in terms of putting the stop on what we are seeing happen in the administration. I recognize that as soon as many of the guardrails started to fall and inspectors generals were being purged and others who were trying to hold independent agencies were being gutted and others who were trying to hold this administration accountable were being sidelined, that the place where I could have impacts was going to be outside of the government, was going to be in civil society, working for a watchdog organization that is able to use the levers of litigation, communication to really educate the public. There's no greater tool than the Freedom of Information Act, which really forces the government to provide information that belongs to the American people. And I knew, based on my experience as a trial attorney, there's a lot of upside to litigation, but that's only as good as the government's willingness to comply. And so at a watchdog like American Oversight, we're able to use different tools and different mechanisms to force accountability and to force the government to be accountable to the people to which they to whom they serve. And so that's one of the reasons why I came to American Oversight. And in partnership with many of our coalition partners, we have been able to really force information out of this administration, and we're going to continue to do so.
And you got that insider knowledge for having been the general counsel for the House Oversight Committee when it was led by the late, great Representative Elijah Cummings, right?
That's right. And so I know firsthand how, congressional oversight works. I know the battles that the members of Congress are going to be up against when they are, if the House changes and Democrats are in the majority. I know even with subpoena power, it's going to be difficult to get information from this administration because this administration does not believe that it should answer to anyone. They believe that the president is king and that all the information belongs to President Trump. And so that's why outside of the government, working in a nonprofit, we're able to really provide information to the public so that they can work with their members of Congress to hold the government accountable. But it's so important that the kind of information that we're seeking in this particular litigation is made public so that the public knows the power that they have to demand answers from the government that's supposed to serve them.
July 15th and 16th will be the confirmation hearing as scheduled. We'll have it live up on Legal AF as a live stream. 15th, I think, is his testimony. 16th, the testimony of others. Do we have any idea who's going to be testifying either against him or for him on the 16th?
That is not information that I'm aware of.
Right. But we have to get to the bottom of that. So one of the nice things about being able to interview somebody at your level with outside watchdog groups and otherwise is, a lot of my audience only hears the name or hears about the lawsuit, but doesn't think about the organization and the superstructure behind it. And then when they hear about your kind of organization, they want to get more involved. What can they do? And we'll put the links below. What can they do to help support the mission of American Oversight?
Well, thank you. the best thing that people can do for organizations like American Oversight is to donate. The work that we do is very resource intensive, and it requires the resources to continue to push, because the administration continues to fight at every chance it gets to withhold information. And we want to make sure that we are consistently putting pressure on the administration to release information that belongs to the American people. And so those who are feeling helpless, that feel like they want to get involved, that they want to do something, and that no one's listening to them, the best thing they could do is both follow American Oversight by going to our website, www.americanoversight.org, and or donate to causes that we are involved in to really push for accountability and transparency.
Yeah, and the notes are below. That's one great thing, many great things about the audience, the community that we've built on Midas Touch and on Legal AF, is their fervent desire to get involved. This is a participatory democracy, and people want to participate and not just passively listen. Yeah, they got to, this is great for informational. This is great. So when they're debating in the marketplace of ideas around their kitchen table, social media, in the streets, whatever it may be, they have knowledge, right? We don't, as we say here, we don't blow smoke or sunshine on Legal AF at all. We tell it to you straight. But they also want to say, now I want to put my feelings into action. And it's so great to hear one, about your organization and have you on more regularly, but also how they can get involved. Good luck with your filing and with the final word by the federal judge, hopefully in your favor right before the confirmation hearing itself. We'll be watching the docket with Judge Friedrich very closely, as I'm sure you and your team will. But thank you so much for joining us, Chioma Chukwu, the Executive Director of American Oversight, updating us on one of dozens of cases and Freedom of Information Act processes that she is handling on our behalf. Thank you for being here on Legal AF.
Thank you.
Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button, and help us continue to grow this pro-democracy channel. I'm Michael Popok. Until my next report. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.
A new piece of reporting we brought you here on Friday simply adds to the extensive list of questionable secret practices and relationships of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and concerns about ethics and influence by our nation's highest court. It was first reported by ProPublica that Justice Thomas made at least 2 previously undisclosed appearances at least 2 donor summits hosted by the powerful right-wing Koch network that has for decades now brought several cases before the Supreme Court, including one of the most closely watched in the upcoming term. Joining our conversation is Democratic Senator from Rhode Island and member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. He also continues to be one of the most prominent voices demanding through legislation and briefs a code of ethics for the Supreme Court. We wish you were here when this story broke. We had the reporter and other court watchers, but I know you've had a lot to say about these issues and these clear and brazen conflicts. They seem to be growing more clear and more brazen to the general public. And I wonder if you think that's creating an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it is. I think, each one of these episodes is pretty disgraceful all by itself. But as you see them in series, you begin to see the commonalities that emerge across the series. You begin to see that it's always a right-wing billionaire, that it's always a right-wing justice, that Leonard Leo, the ubiquitous little court fixer, is almost inevitably involved, that it always involves the Federalist Society or Ginny Thomas's little charity or the Americans for Prosperity battleship of the Koch brothers. And while every single one doesn't have every one of these pieces, when you stack them all up over and over again, it's the same little network of a few right-wing billionaires. I think we're up to 6 right now, and a few right-wing justices, 2 that we've discovered so far, and then the front groups that intermediate between the